In this episode, I'm going to look at a Sony VHS machine. I'm going to do the top side alignment. And this is because I had a viewer ask about how to do the tower gear and the subcam on one of the original Sony VHS machines. He got his tower gear out of alignment. That's what operates the pinch arm. And if it's not set up right, it's obviously not going to play. It's really easy to set up, and I'll show you how to do it right now. As promised, I'm going to show you guys quickly how to align the top side of a Sony VHS chassis. This was the classic Sony chassis, the one with the blue gear that always breaks. We've done videos on that before. I think I may have covered this before, but I had somebody ask me specifically about the tower gear and how to time the tower gear. It's very simple to time the tower gear. Now, you got to have your alignment correct on the bottom. So you've got all of your alignment holes are lined up. And with the mechanism in the stop mode, which is the fully unloaded mode, tape ejected, what you will see is there's a little red gear right here. And you'll see that in this red gear there's a little hole. Well, there's a hole in the covering, the alignment hole right here. And there's a hole in the red gear. And you can see that I can put my screwdriver right down there because the hole in the red gear, if I move it, you'll probably see it. Maybe I can move it a bit, but you should be able to see. You should be able to see the red right here, the hole in the gear. So we know the alignment is good. The first thing we need to do is we need to put the first cam on, which is the one that operates the P5 guide. This is the one that always seizes up. As you can see, this one's already been serviced. So I serviced this machine years ago. First thing we need to do is we need to put the cam gear on. Now, how does the cam gear go on? Well, the cam gear obviously fits on here. You'll notice that there's a hole in the chassis right here. And that hole is going to line up with this one. And when that hole is lined up with this one, this hole is going to point at this gear. So let's go ahead and let's put that one on. So I'm going to move the P5 guide out of the way and drop the gear into place. And we're going to time it so that it lines up with that hole. Just like that. Now, that gear is timed correctly. I can go ahead and I can put the cup washer on. Now we've got the secondary gear. This is the one that drives. This is the secondary cam gear. And the secondary cam gear also has an alignment hole right here that is going to line up with this hole right there. See, these machines were all put together on pins that were extended through the chassis so that the gears could be dropped on. Put on by a machine, though, that would rotate them until they dropped into place. So we put this gear on, and we align it up so that we can see the hole below. And push it down. So it's on just like that. We can see the hole below it. And now you notice that there's a mark right here, a timing mark. That timing mark lines up with a timing mark on the tower gear. So now we take the tower gear, we point the two timing marks at each other, just like that. We're in alignment. And also you'll notice, if you look closely on here, there is a cutout. Whoops. You'll notice that there is a cutout right on this edge of this sub cam gear. This is the gear that actually presses the pinch roller into place. This is the pinch press cam. There's a cutout here, which means that the tower gear can only drop into place when this gear is properly timed. If the gear is in any other phase, you won't be able to lower the tower gear down, which makes it easy. So you're just going to drop the tower gear in place and point the two timing marks at each other. The tower gear drops into place just like that. And now you can probably see this timing mark below here a little easier. If I put my screwdriver down through there, you'll see that it locks it. So now we are correctly timed. Tower gear is timed, sub cam is timed, and we're ready to install the pinch arm assembly. Pinch arm assembly just drops in place just like that, and then the retainer clip goes on just like that. That's how simple it is to time the top end to one of these Sony VHS machines. This being a Sony SLV 555. Many consider this to be one of Sony's finest of their VHS. This was their first. This was Sony's first VHS machine. This and the 757, the difference between this one and the 757, of course, was the 757 had flying erase heads and could do insert editing. Other than the capacitors that blow up on this one, which I think I've already replaced on this particular unit. Odd time you get a regulator that pops on it over here. And the blue gear that breaks, and this gets gummed up. This the P5 guide. It's P5. And of course the capstan bearing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is P5. This was P5, what they called it. Gets gummed up. I'm counting the guides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, P5. Greased right up on here, caused it to stick. Then it would eat tapes because it's returned by a spring. And if it got stuck when it was loaded, it wouldn't release. If it was gummed up and it wouldn't load, well, quite often it would break this gear, and you had to change this gear. This white gear would break. But other than that, these ones here were actually very good performing machines. It was, as I say, Sony's first VHS machine that they released. This is the one that the literature, the sales literature, when Sony announced this, the sales literature said, co-inventor of VHS. They took some of JVC's wind out of their sail because JVC, of course, always claimed that they were the inventor of VHS. And anybody who has followed the story, anybody who knows, other than maybe the JVC fanboys out there that don't believe anybody else's version, but when the home video formats were being first developed, Sony invented video cassette recording, period. And it was the U-matic, the 3/4 inch. And when the home video formats were being considered, Sony, Matsushita, and JVC, and Toshiba were all in talks. And Sanyo, I think Hitachi might have been in there too, but the big three was Sony, Matsushita, and JVC. They were working on, they wanted a one universal system that would be the de facto standard for home video. And Sony, JVC, and Matsushita had gone through several prototypes. Sanyo was in the mix too. They had their V-Cord, which actually hit the market but never really amounted to anything. But several systems were considered. And one of them was what eventually became VHS, which Sony at the time had discounted that. They felt that it was, with all the moving parts, with all the guides and so forth that VHS had with the M loading system, that there was just too many parts moving around that would break. And they wanted something that was proven. And they proposed the Betamax, because the Betamax was essentially a scaled down 3/4 inch U-matic. It used the same threading system. It used a 1/2 inch tape versus 3/4 inch, but it used the same threading system that 3/4 inch used. And it used essentially the same circuitry, the same carrier frequency, the same chroma down converted frequency, 688 kilohertz. Smaller drum, but based very much on their already standardized broadcast, or in the case of this, it wasn't even used for broadcast. 3/4 inch was the industrial format, but it was based on the 3/4 inch, and that was the plans. They announced their Betamax machine, and to their shock, JVC used one of the cast-off designs, named it VHS, made a few changes to it so that it wasn't an exact copy of the Betamax. In other words, they changed the frequency of the chroma, and they changed the carrier frequency just enough so that they wouldn't get sued. But that's what happened with VHS. And when Sony brought this machine to the market, they wanted their credit for their share of the design, because they were the driving factor in home video. Anyway, that's a little history. And that you can find that information. It's out on the web. If you don't believe me, do some digging. It's there. But Sony used to, in the literature, the sales literature for this, I think even the sales brochures, I might even have a sales brochure, I'll have to go look, but the sales brochure said, from the co-inventor of VHS on this model. Like, they only did it for the one year, this one and the 757. Anyway, now that this is timed, you'll see that it plays.
You'll be enjoying that sound.
One of the neat things about this specific model, and not too many models did this, is on the back here you'll see that there are two sets of video outputs. Get your video in, and there are two sets of video outputs. One marked monitor out, one marked line out. Guess what the difference between the two of them is? Yep. You guessed it. No blue screen, no on-screen graphics.
Exclusive hyper surround sound.
Which makes this deck, believe it or not, the ultimate deck for someone looking for a machine to archive with if they don't want the play and all the other crap coming up on their archive copies. It's got one output that you can send to the monitor, which will show you the on-screen graphics, like the tape position and time and so forth, and the other one does not. And that's something that a lot of VCRs didn't have. All they had was just the standard video out, and when you press play, you got the word play on the screen for like 5 seconds, and every time a glitch came by, it would come up and say hi-fi, or, you know, it would just, it's annoying for using a machine for archiving to have graphics popping up on the screen all the time. So this is one of the machines that you could use for that without having to deal with the on-screen graphics. Anyway, I wanted to keep this video short just to get down to the point on how to do the timing on that. I think we've succeeded. It's pretty simple. Anybody should be able to follow those directions and get your alignment done first time in like 2 minutes. Thanks for watching.